Hello and welcome to another Cars and Cardboard review. We're going to critique and criticize today a game by AEG called Automobiles. Now, Automobiles is a kind of deck building, bag building game in which you're trying to get your pawn to go around the track a number of times before your opponents. So you're going to have this kind of interesting engine efficiency game. So without any further ado, we're going to kind of take it in the box and show you what's going on. Okay, so here's our box for Automobiles. We're going to take you inside and show you what we got here. Okay. So the first thing I want to bring up is the insert. This insert is very nicely made because it's got a little area on the bottom here for the bags, and then also the area here to hold cubes. The board itself is actually notched out here. Cards and extra wear and tear tokens all go in here, and that's just perfect. This thing is very easy to set up because of that. Okay, so the first bit of business we have here is this rule book. You know, it's a very fairly well written rule book. It's got a nice layout. However, there are a few issues I have with it. There are some instances in here where it's a little hard to be read. It's about 15 pages here, and all the card references back here. I would kind of like to see this on its own little sheet. Not to mention this is really huge. It's supposed to match the size of the box, but I don't know why I don't like it so much, but it would be nice if just a little bit smaller. So over here you have your player cards. These are basically the same, just different color. They have two sides on them that are, again, the same, just a different car for the theme. When you are doing your turn, this is what you're going to use to symbolize everything you've kind of done during your turn and what you actually have access to. So when you end your turn, you're going to draw 7 cubes and put them on this track here for the active pool. Whenever you use things on your turn, either to move on the board or to use their ability, you're going to put them in the use pile. This is also where you put purchased cubes for the turn into. And then at the end of your turn, everything's going to go into the discard pile. And then when you run out of cubes in your bag, you're going to draw up 7 more and put them over here. Or shuffle all of your things from your discard back into your bag and then pull out 7. So these are useful. They're just the right size for this game, I feel, because you are dealing with 7 cubes every turn instead of, say, drawing 5. So there's that. So the next bit that the game comes with is all these cards. You've got different colors of them that are corresponding to these colors of cubes that you're going to use in the game. You've got blue for your engines, you've got green for the performance, you've got red for handling, you have your pit crew in purple, you have your garage in yellow, and then finally you've got these generic ones, which are your third, fourth, fifth, and sixth gear cards. These are in every game along with the wear cube card here. And the way you kind of build your bag to start with is you're going to have several small white cubes, 2 or 3 of these gray cubes, and 3 of these yellow cubes. And everyone's going to start with that. And depending on what color the cube is, of course, depends on what kind of card you've chosen for this round. So you're going to choose one of every card type to play with for the single race here. And that's going to affect many things during your replay factor here at the end of the review. But it gives you the ability to kind of pick and choose your strategies throughout the game, and it's going to effectively change the way you're going to play. Now, the easiest way for me to explain these cards is to actually show you the board. So we're going to actually move on to that now. So this is the board. It's a nice heavy quality stock. It's got different areas on the map listed in white, gray, and black or dark gray. So the way things work in this game is when you set up the game, you're going to have the first player, second player, third player, fourth player, and fifth player, respectively, on this little track here. And they're going to get that starting bag of cubes And then also they're going to get a dollar amount listed on here, depending on their place, of additional cubes that they can purchase from the store to put in their bag. Why is this important? Well, because most deck builders start you off all on the same track here, where everyone has the same stuff in their bag. In this case, it's no different. However, doing this at the beginning of the game effectively means that you can build your strategy from turn 1 instead of having to build it as you go. So this makes it a bit quicker for a deck builder game. The only other feature on the map is actually this little area that represents how many were cubes you get, depending on what kind of places you've moved on the board. So, for example, I would start here. I would move only on white. Since I moved only on white spaces, I'm only going to get 1 were cube for my turn. But if ever I move onto a light gray or dark gray or the black here, I'm going to accumulate even more were cubes. Now you only get the highest that you have acquired depending on how you move, but if you are drafting behind someone, or you rather end your turn right behind somebody, then you actually will not take any were cubes whatsoever for that turn. So there's a bit of a strategy in there for where you are on the board and how you place yourself beside your opponents. Drafting is a very interesting mechanic because there's actually tiny little lines here dividing some of these larger sectors. When you end your movement, you're going to slide all the way to the end of one of these sectors, no matter where you are. Whites only ever have 1, but these dark grays have like 3, and the light grays have 2. And these big black ones usually have 5 or more. So what's going to happen is, if I start here and I find some way to eventually move up to this black space here, I'm going to end my turn, but then I'm going to go all the way to the end here. So that kind of represents you rushing ahead in the game. So what you're going to focus on is these big groupings of spaces rather than the individual things in there. But if there is somebody already in those spots at the end, then that's when you're going to have to worry about that. Because if you want to move off of this black space now, because you're not at the end, you're going to have to go on the dark gray and then to the light gray area here. It's because you always have to move forward in this game. So there are 2 sides of this board here. You've got the Daytona and then you got Monza. I'm sure I'm going to mess this up at the end of the review because I don't know, I always think of Japanese drift car racing when I think of certain maps that look kind of like this. Now, the thing is you've got, a different pattern of how this game is laid out. You've got these 2 large black areas here. So if you get a black cube or 2 when you get to these parts of the map, those are going to really bring you ahead. And then you've also got this little area where there is actually no easy way of going through this unless you have white or light gray cubes. Now, when it comes down to the double colors, these can be either or, but you're always going to take where equal to the highest value there. So in this case, with the white and gray, you're going to take 2, and with the dark gray and the light gray, you're going to take 3. So you've got this kind of interesting strategy where you're going to take these extra cubes that are effectively worthless in your deck, or in your bag, but you get to travel further on the map. All that is part of the risk, and several of the actions from the cards here will actually have you do things where you are going to effectively take these were cubes into your bag and hinder yourself more. Now, the cards themselves, getting back to it, I said a dollar amount earlier. They have a little price in the corner here, and that price really dictates how much they are bought for, but they also have a value on the bottom here, which represents how many dollars that cube is worth if you use it to purchase something instead during your turn. Because what you're basically doing in your turn is going down this little summary thing here where you're going to draw your cubes from your bag at the end of your turn, have everyone else go, and then after you decide what you're going to do on your turn, you can then activate cubes and move into your use pile in order to use them. Or you can buy things here, or as they suggest, you actually take the cubes that you're using for movement and put them on the map to show where you're moving. So, for example here, I'm going to go ahead and take one of these cars. I was here, I used, a white, alright, this is not a good example. A white, a light gray, and a light gray. Then at the end of my turn, I'm going to move here, take these, and then I'm going to take a number of corresponding were cubes and put those into my discard pile then. It's an interesting way of sorting out where you are on the map. and I like the way that they kind of rule that. Because it makes the board a lot more easier to navigate when you actually put the cubes out and use that effectively. Finally, to bring up is the action that you can take if you have nothing but these were cubes. These were cubes will always be worth pretty much nothing to you unless you can sell them off somehow through one of the various cube abilities. And what these effectively mean is that if you draw an entire hand of these, you're not going anywhere, and it would be better for you to take the pit crew action, which effectively removes all of these from your discard pile and puts them back into the central supply. So that's a bit of the strategy in this game. Now, I love these cube trays. These things are a great idea, but as I'm going to say probably later in the review, they don't actually come off all the way. They are hinged. I left one hinged here because I wanted to show that off. It's a little unbalanced, but you know, if you cut them off on their edge using an X-Acto knife, then you have this nice little thing that you can actually put them underneath and they won't slide around too much. Now, the goal of the game, if it wasn't stated earlier, was to be the first person to win the race. In any standard race here, you know, you're trying to get around the checkered flag here any number of times, and that's tracked up here, so you can do anywhere from 2, 3, 7 laps if you like. I think the recommendation is you do about 4 or 5 because then you're really pushing your limits and you get an interesting bit of luck factor in there too. We've played 3 and 4, and that's pretty much our sweet spot there because we don't want to take too long for the game. But I'll bring that up more in the final thoughts here. Okay, so now it's time for final thoughts. Now, I've played planes, trains, and automobiles now. That's not the order they came out in, of course. It was trains, then planes, then automobiles. But as far as the Destination Fun games go, I've appreciated all of them. They've all had unique spins on popular mechanics at the time. Trains had a deck building mechanic that utilized the board and focused heavily on, you know, this interaction between the players and the board and having the actions to put things on that board and score the most points. Whereas planes, again, had this interesting Mancala mechanism. We'll do a review of that later on, but that was also quite unique. Automobiles here. This game takes kind of the deck building, bag building genre and mixes it with the race genre, and actually comes ahead in quite a nice little game. The things I like about it are that it's fairly customizable. There's ways to play on the different tracks, and there's probably some rules out there where you can build your own tracks, which I would love to see. And of course, from the Destination Fun expansion, due to be released sometime later in the next year or two, we're looking at maybe more maps to play on. So, but right now, what you get in the box, that's what we're going to focus our review on. It's not going to be linked to the other games at all. It's just focusing on the core game, Automobiles here. Okay, so now we're going to do the final breakdown here based on the final thoughts. I have a series of criteria that I do here, and we're going to start with the rulebook. So the rulebook is fairly well written. However, there's a few little nuances I didn't like about it, namely the size of the book and the layout of the book, and some of the writing is just a little incohesive to the design of the game. When you play some of these Destination Fun games, some of the rules get lost in these big blocks of text and could have had better bolding on them, and honestly could have probably been described better. But once you play the games, they're fairly easy to pick up and learn. So overall, I'm going to give the rulebook a 7. And that's because of the whole fact that, yes, there's the card explanations in the back of the book. However, it'd be nice if there was maybe like a little leaflet instead of that being in the actual rulebook. And the rulebook could have just been a little bit better worded. So the artwork in the game, I'm going to give the artwork a total of 8 because it's very functional and it works well. I had a few points of contention when it came to use of the cards and also parts of the board. Some of the lines on the board for the intermittent parts of the track can be a little hard for certain people to read, especially if it's in a darker environment. So you might have a few issues with that. You might need to mark them out a little bit better on your own personal board. The cards themselves have this weird little thing where at the bottom of them they have the dollar sign for how much each cube is worth when you're using it to buy things. That could have been maybe improved to just put $1 and, you know, how much it's worth rather than put you know, $1, $2, or $3 signs on there, because we've had some issues with people thinking that they can use certain cubes to buy things, but they're worth nothing, but they see the little dollar sign up in the corner for how much it costs to buy. Uh, I mean, that worked well. I could clearly tell it, but again, maybe some others had some issues with that, and that's the only reason why we dock it down a few points. So components is our next segment. Components quality is very nice. The cubes I had, however, some of them were stuck together at first, but those broke apart easily enough. I understand through the painting process that happens. The board is solid. The bags are just amazing. The bags are actually crushed velvet-like bags, and they're big enough where I can even get my big hands in there. In fact, I'll pull one out here from the box and show you. However, again, the rulebook just a little too large for the game box, and the insert itself is not as cohesive as I'd like it to be, but I do like these little trays that came with it as well. I do suggest, however, cutting the edges off on the sides there so that we can actually take the entire lid off. But getting to these awesome bags, I mean, these bags I wish come in several other games, and again, I can get my big mitts in here, and it's just perfect. These cards, since you don't really shuffle them, you're not going to need to sleeve these. The only time you're going to need to protect them is if you're taking them out somewhere. And the board itself is, again, a very nice hard stock board. The only minor complaint, again, besides the whole fact that the rulebook's a little large and that these cube trays need cutting, is the fact that when you have the entire thing put into the box together, it does actually stick up outside of the box. So you can't actually close the box all the way sometimes. In fact, it actually shipped like that. If you're lucky, you can reorganize things and it comes down fully. But when I got it, it was about 2/3 of an inch off of the box itself. So again, good design, and I expect more maps to come out as well. So you're going to need to probably utilize your box a bit more when it comes to storing things. And thankfully, unlike trains, you're actually going to be able to maybe take out parts of the insert and edit that out and, you know, get everything into a single box. So we're going to give the component quality, well, let's go 9. Because cube trays and nice bags, those things really help sell a game for me. And having those included is just so, you know, so nice, so unique for something to finally have in one of these. Because I hate getting games where it's like, okay, you need to reach in for a bag, and they don't supply a bag. And in this case, they supplied not only a good bag, but a very good bag that's also well built, and everything fits into the box. So mechanics. Mechanics is our next segment where we explain how the game works, what things I like about it. There are a few minor issues I have with the game. The setup takes a little bit of time because you have to basically say everyone's making a unique bag right from the get-go. But that is actually a really fun mechanic as well for me because it allows people to kind of get into the game a lot quicker than most deck builders, where they start off, you know, with a set collection of cubes in this case. They get that, but they also get to pre-build their deck for like a turn or two, and thus makes the game even more efficient and focused towards the end game. There are quite a bit of elements of luck in here, though, with the good bag draws. Sometimes you'll have people who stock like Nitro, which is a blue cube, where they can rush ahead like 7 or 8 different spaces just because they managed to get a few of those. But they are basically hindered by that too, because if they don't have the right cubes on their discard pile, or the other people don't have cubes in their discard pile, suddenly these cubes become a lot less effective. So it's a lot of risk management, and that can lead to some runaway leader problems. I don't call that much of a problem, but there were plenty of cases where we had almost places where one person was near to the end of the race and we had gone like 4 or 5 laps, and one person gets a really good draw and they rush around and win on that last moment. It was kind of fantastic. But on the other hand, it's a little swingy. So I say mechanically this is going to be about a 7. Namely because there's a lot of focus on other people's turns for where they end up going, what things they drew and used on their turn, what things they bought, and that is something that takes a little bit more of a higher focus to actually understand for some gamers, because I had issues where I just drew hands which should have been good, but because of how the rest of my cubes were in my discard pile or how cubes were in other people's discard piles, they just did not do very well. So you gotta definitely weigh your risks in here, and that's part of the fun, but it's also one of those things that you're, if you're teaching it to somebody right off the bat, they're gonna have to learn that through playing the game multiple times. I have to say though, for mechanically, the one map, Nialga, or the Japanese slot car race, I believe, because there's a Daytona and this other track here, and they basically give you the standard Daytona going around the circle, taking a left turn, NASCAR style. That's fine, but you always can plan where your cubes are going to be the most effective. But with the other one, you have this interesting thing where you've got these long stretches of these fifth gear or final gear tokens that you're really going to want at the right time. But on other hands, you're going to need like smaller ones to get around these bends, and that's really cool. I would love to see a little bit more variety in the map construction from this point forward. Introduce more of these kind of maps where they are specialized and that you have to focus on how you're building your bag and what's going in there and how much risk can you take for drawing those waste cubes. Again, much like other Destination Fun games, this has an interesting way of kind of taking these mechanics from other games and just making them feel good in a different sense. So that's one thing I really enjoyed about this game. So mechanically, again, I like that number that I gave it. It's a very sound 7. I want to give it an 8 if we can get more maps, because I feel that that's where the game's going to excel the most. Okay, so replay factor. Replay factor is a big point in these kind of games, because with race games, it really does matter how many laps you're doing and how your bank of cards, in this case, is laid out. You've got a limited number of cubes, so when you're playing at max players, you're going to be having to choose every time which one you're buying very selectively. And then also what cubes you use on your turn are going to be heavily influencing your later game, because the more wear and tear you get in there, the less efficient your turns are. And you can get away with some of these high yield turns and take a ton of wear and tear and then get lucky again and not have to pay those consequences for those wear and tear. But eventually they're going to catch up with you. I've had turns where you draw like 5 or 6 of those and you're just like, yeah, this was a terrible turn for me. And you have to spend a turn doing nothing practically. I don't like that, but on the other hand, it's all the risk management in here, and there's plenty of ways to mitigate that as well. So we've played it a few times around here, and I really want to get it out more. And there's just so many different ways to build with the current cards, and the 2 tracks is just enough replay factor to keep it interesting. I want more tracks though, and I want more cards. So when the Destination Fun expansion comes out, there better be both of those. Maybe even include another player. I'm not sure. I think the current player number is good for itself right now. It says 2 to 5. Yeah, 2 to 5, but 2 to 5 is a very particular number. I would like to see this maybe catch up with like Snow Tales or some other racing games where you can actually get 6 people out there. Of course, you need to add more cubes to the game and one more bag, but I feel like it'd be worth it. And I don't know how they play tested for this, but maybe 5 cars is just too much on the track. Who knows? I would love to see that though for future things. But for the current replay factor right out of the box, I'm going to give this a 7. So again, you need to shuffle those cards every time you try a new track, and then you need to try both tracks a number of times. Who knows, maybe you'll end up making your own track or finding them on Board Game Geek and downloading them and printing them off. I think those are both ways to keep the game alive, and it's beneficial to keep the game alive in that sense. So the final thoughts. What do I rate this game? Well, I would love to give this a bit of a higher score, but I have to default downward to 7 because of the fact that the gameplay is going to get very samey after a while. I know I said that in the replay factor, it's going to keep going up and up and up based on how you play the game with the different assortment of cards or which map you're playing on. But until we get more variety in that, that's what's really going to hinder that for me, and that's going to drag it down. The components, I loved the insert and everything about it, how it was stored. It was just perfect. There was just a few little elements in there that, very tiny things that kind of annoy me, and it mainly came down to the rule book in itself, because the rule book could have been a little bit better worded, and the card abilities could have been on their own different sheet. Or heck, even on the back of the player aids, like they did with some of the other Destination Fun games. Now, comparing it to the other ones, it's definitely stronger, I feel, than Planes was for me. I did like Planes because of the interesting Mancala mechanisms and the way you scored cards in that game. This one has just one singular focus for winning the game, and that's just get to the end. So it's a lot more defined in that sense. And there's a lot more paths to that victory condition. Comparing this to Trains, there really is no big comparison. The only thing they have similar is deck building. None of them is a superior deck building game to another. I know cards and cubes are two different things, but they're practically the same thing. I feel that the automobiles again had a little bit more focus on this, but Trains ultimately gave you more options and a lot more replayability. And it has the support from the community for more maps and even more maps that were available for it to buy. So, not to mention they had another second box expansion. That's the only reason why I have Trains up there, a little higher on this. So, Automobile's kind of a happy medium in these Destination Fun games. You have something that's not overly simplistic, but also something that's not overly complex. And, that's something that's good. It fits really well into my collection. I have a few other games that have this kind of race theme that I haven't gotten on the table as much as this game. And when it comes down to it, I enjoy playing automobiles. And seeing myself come in last place because of a bad draw, it hurts, but I understand how I got there. So that's it for my final thoughts at this time. Thank you so much for coming by and watching our Cards and Cardboard review. We are currently going through some changes in the channels, so we are going to have a little end card thing over here. As you can see, we have a link to another video that we've done, probably another Destination Fun if we ever post one. Down below we have our subscribe button. Please, share these links, share the videos around. We're trying as hard as we can to develop a new type of content. We've got more live plays that we're planning out with some friends that we're going to be recording. If you have anything that you want to request, please just don't hesitate to say, hey, I would like to see more of this on Board Game Geek or on YouTube in general. We have some live plays coming up for more BattleCon stuff, and we're going to be working on other videos of other games to do live plays of. So if you got any requests for anything that we've previously done, we'll definitely schedule out a live play for that and see if we can't get that done. We also are working on a different channel, which is going to be video game focused. If you haven't seen the digital reviews, we have the Board Games on Steam blog going on Board Game Geek that I'm curating, and all those videos over there. So, hey, come and give me a shout out on Tabletop Simulator sometime, or if you have any of these games and you want to play us, let us know.